4. Beautiful. Okay. We are just about ready to go. Okay.
Are we ready then, Vinny?
We are ready. Okay.
Okay.
Just tell me when, or are we live already?
We're already live.
Okay.
We're already live. Good evening, everybody. Welcome to Raconteurs News. It's been the first one in quite a while, but as you know, everyone's aware. A lot of stuff been going on. Aidy's been out of the country, and obviously I've been having the well-documented problems that I've had, But we're going to forget all about that this evening, because we're going to have a nice, jolly, upbeat show, and we're going to find out some good information on what's been going on all over the world, really. Good evening, Aid. How are you doing, mate? How are you today?
Yeah, I'm good, thanks, mate. And you'll be pleased to know that everything in Thailand is still as wonderful as it used to be. And
sorry about that, guys.
It's all right. And all this kind of stuff just seems to just not be relevant over there somehow. But anyway.
Okay, I'm sorry, I missed what you were saying there before. I had to monitor my stream over here. So hi everybody, I'm Vinny Eastwood from the Vinny Eastwood Show, the lighter side of genocide. Just because we're being exterminated doesn't mean we can't make it fun. Otherwise, what's the point of being killed? The Vinny Eastwood Show, where the only thing worse than living in a high-tech global concentration camp is Vinny's jokes. So the thing about the Christchurch mosque massacre, which was what I was on here last time talking about.
First of all, let me just introduce you. If anybody hasn't noticed, we've got Vinny Eastwood with us, all the way from New Zealand. He's got up this morning. He's had some toast and marmalade, and I think he's
Marmite.
Marmite. Okay, toast
you can't
and
have
marmite
without that.
this morning, and he seems to have quite a lot to say. So I think we'll just probably let you go. Go on, Vinny. I just wanted to introduce you to everybody formally.
All right, cool. So the thing I'm doing right now is just basically broadcasting about all sorts of things. You know, there's been this Greta Thunberg incident. There's all bunches of measles propaganda kind of going on in New Zealand, and a whole bunch of other things. But, you know, last time I was on here, we were talking about the Christchurch mosque massacre, and things haven't gotten any better. If anything, they've really kind of stayed the same. So for those of you who are unaware, earlier this year, a Australian bought some New Zealand firearms. He was reported to the police. The police ignored the complaint. He then went and shot up a couple of mosques, killed a whole bunch of people, and then the government within 2 weeks ended internet freedom, free speech, and gun ownership. Just like that. And made it illegal to investigate who this guy is, illegal to read his manifesto, and illegal to analyze the video that he posted live online. Okay, nothing really much has changed since then. We don't have freedom of speech, we don't have internet freedom, and we don't have the right to defend ourselves against firearms. And the people who are supposed to protect us, i.e. the quote-unquote authorities, have made it illegal to investigate, have made it illegal to defend ourselves, and are trying to get guns off us left, right, and center. And the question on a lot of people's minds is, what's this heading towards? Well, if you know anything about the New World Order and the United Nations disarmament program, part of their program was to disarm countries step by step by step. First they take assault rifles, then they take the semi-automatics, then they take the handguns, then they take the rifles, then they take the crossbows, then they take the knives, and then you've got absolutely nothing to defend yourself whatsoever, and only the military and police have guns. And that's what Comrade Jacinda, our Prime Minister, is up to at the moment, guys, unfortunately.
Vinny, you mentioned there, you know, after the Christchurch, a lot of these laws were brought in very, very quickly. In true Patriot Act style, I might add.
Yeah, it was quick. I'd never seen anything like it. It was just like, okay, it's illegal now. Huh? Where do you see that coming? And it's kind of like, it's funny you mentioned the Patriot Act, because on the day it happened, I coined this this attack as New Zealand's 9/11, and just like 9/11, directly afterwards, a whole bunch of things are done that could have basically had nothing to do with 9/11, that people wouldn't have been prepared to accept at all, unless, of course, there was some widely perceived direct external threat. Yeah. Oh, look, white people with guns. We all need to be really, really frightened about that. But isn't white people with guns the entire reason why you've got a country in the first place, bro? Yeah. But still, you know, white people with guns are really, really bad. We need to get rid of them. Those terrible English colonizer people. Oh my God. You know, it's just, it's getting emotional. All right. And the thing is, it's not so much the government you have to fear anymore. It's your own citizenry, the snitches. Seriously. I've been snitched on.
It's a self-policing environment, isn't it?
Yeah, well, it doesn't really self-police. I mean, you have to have personal responsibility in order to self-police. These snitches, on the other hand, they don't have any personal responsibility. They don't have any brains. They don't have any integrity. All they do is they say, somebody's talking about stuff that I don't like. I'm going to report him to the police because I think that's the right thing to do, because that's what the government told me to do, and the government never lies. It's just this complete infantilization.
And everybody's happy. Everybody's really happy if they become a victim, because everybody just can't wait to be a victim.
Yeah. Oh, I just can't wait, mate. I mean, seriously, how could I ever have personal power of any kind unless I was a victim of something, you know?
Exactly.
Like, how am I ever going to get privileges that I didn't earn unless I was a victim of something? How am I ever going to get people to take care of me instead of bothering to take care of myself in any way, shape, and form unless I was a victim?
Yep. Vinny, what's happened? You know, with the Christchurch, a lot of people saw the video. A lot of people had YouTube stuff taken down. We found a lot of people who were what's the word I'm looking for, Jason?
Self-censoring.
Self-censoring. And even after they'd self-censored, they were still getting strikes on the YouTube accounts, even though stuff was taken down. It's almost as if it was the thought police came out and said, yeah, but you thought about putting that video up, so we're going to give you a straight. It's like they used it as this mass excuse to hit us all with the algorithms. But at the base of all that was this Christchurch, let's call it event or non-event. What was actually, in the eyes of the people who live in that area and from New Zealand, what's the perception now? Because what we get over here in the UK is next to nothing.
Well, let me just check my poll. Did a poll the other day asking if people truly believed the Christchurch Mosque Massacre official story. And we had quite a lot of responses. So the question is, do you completely accept the official story about the Christchurch Mosque Massacre? This is on my Facebook. 757 votes, 5% yes.
That many?
So 1 in 20 people believe the official story, according to my own poll. But that's, of course, with my listeners and my network and stuff like that. But regardless, we've seen major polls being done about, say, like 9/11. Do you believe the government official story? And the majority of people do not believe the government official story. Approximately 30% of people or less believe anything the mainstream media says. And so hence the internet censorship. Okay, you have to make sure that you censor all of us, and that was the plan. It had nothing to do with what videos you were putting up. It had nothing to do with anything you were actually doing. It comes down to this. Do they have complete and utter total control of what everybody says in real time online? Okay, and I think the Christchurch Mosque Massacre was a beta test for this. So they go, all right, well, here's the thing. We've got this guy and he did a live stream and then he killed a whole bunch of people on that live stream. Therefore, we're going to make live streaming illegal, because it wasn't, it wasn't the gun or the psychosis or the or the murder that we're concerned about. No, it's live streaming, bro, because that really hurts people. Like you see right now.
Yeah. Let's ban the number 7 bus, because he actually went there on a number 7 bus. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, and stuff like that, and that's how you know that it's not all as it seems. That kind of thing, because it doesn't seem genuine to me. The way that they've attacked the public for what one foreign citizen did.
Are the mainstream still covering this, or is it all been brushed away now?
I haven't been monitoring the mainstream media for like 10 years, so I wouldn't know. But I am picking up a lot of dissent around the country regarding Jizzy Ardern and this Christchurch Mox massacre and stuff like that. So even if the mainstream aren't talking about it, the public certainly are talking about it, and they are suspicious. And what's even more suspicious, or at least this is what I found out on day one. Like on day one, I got censored in the middle of a live stream with Ole Damagard talking about false flags and all of that kind of stuff. And even since then, I've been self-censoring myself and just going, don't say the word false flag. Don't say the word false flag. And then still, as you say, getting censored, getting demonetized. I mean, I was getting maybe between $700 and $900 US a month through super chats alone because of my coverage doing the Christchurch Moss massacre, because there was nobody else in the world who was in New Zealand. There was nobody else in the world that had 10 years of experience of journalism in New Zealand.
And that's when we had you on last for exactly that reason.
Yeah, because I am essentially, for better or worse, the point man on this. At the time that it happened, I was really exhausted. I wanted to take a couple of months off or something like that, and I was like, no. Responsibility calls. He who has the ability has the responsibility. So I got all bunches of journalists from around the country to have their comments on it. And what's really scary about it is the gun confiscation stuff happened almost immediately. I went down to Christchurch 2 weeks after the attack, and one of the guys who I met down there, I met up with a bunch of listeners, and we went out and had a few drinks and had a few chats and stuff. And he was saying that the cops turned up at his house at 2:00 in the morning. And they didn't have a member of parliament with them, which under New Zealand law, if the New Zealand police are going after a member of the New Zealand police defence force, rather, which this guy was, New Zealand Army, you're supposed to have a member of parliament there to make sure that the army doesn't shoot the police. Okay.
Really?
That's what you're supposed to do, and they didn't have that, and they didn't even have the correct firearms licenses in order to even carry or think his weapons, right? And we've had another one. I think we had a person in New Zealand just yesterday. I think I posted the thing of him. Because it's not just the guns that you got to watch out for now, it's free speech. Okay, so this is from Adam Holland, posted October the 13th at 3:02 p.m. Quote, the police woke me up from a bad hangover and charged me with, quote, disorderly behavior for saying I support US President Donald Trump in public. The police's version is that it caused someone to have a panic attack and subsequently she spilled coffee all over herself. What is this country coming to? You are not allowed to openly support the US president, in New Zealand by the looks of it. Total BS. Share this around, especially if you're living in the United States. Hashtag Trump, hashtag MAGA. And I was just kind of like sitting there thinking about this, and you go, okay, this is not good. All right, so you can't even express support of Donald Trump. I mean, now, I'm not a Trump supporter. I don't support government full stop because it means mind control. And I have great difficulty with, the Trump movement and all of that kind of thing. They're like, oh, he's a god. I love him. I want to have his babies. And
he's a puppet. He's a puppet of the system.
Yeah. And that's the thing. People are now starting to believe that each other are the puppets and not the huge people that they've put on pedestals. It's like, oh, you must be working for the oil companies, Vinny. Yeah, what how could you tell? It was all the millions of dollars and things like that I get from the oil companies. Is it the huge quantity of staff that I have? Is it the mansion that I live in, or any of these things that don't frickin' exist? Is that why I'm working for the oil companies when I question climate change, that kind of thing? So basically, the population is at each other's throats, left, right, and centre. In New Zealand, we've got people snitching on everybody for absolutely no reason. He said he supported Donald Trump, and I spilled coffee on myself as a result after having a panic attack. Okay, have you tried hardening up
or getting a fucking life?
Or growing up? One of the two. Just try it, see how it goes, and if you like it, keep it. All right, grow up, harden up, stop being a frickin' patsy. I've got great difficulty dealing with this kind of situation right now because you can hear it in my voice. I'm really actually scared even to talk about this right now after so many months of the incident passing, because the public sensitivity is such that if there's one frickin' scumbag in the chat room right now who wanted to, they could report me to the police, and I could have the police visit me 5 times in a row like they did in the start of the Christchurch mosque massacre. You know, they can do that. And if they lie, what's the consequences to them? 0. Okay, what if I tell the truth? What's the consequences to me? Getting visited by the police all the time. You see?
Yeah. You see, we're in the fortunate position where we're allowed to not to give a fuck, simply because what can they do to me? Jason and I can't be demonetized because we never monetized anything at all ever. So what we do for free. We put information out there. We're lucky enough to get guests like yourself on who can also come and throw your stuff in the pot. But they can't demonetize us because we don't have any, we don't want any, we don't need any, because we just are what we are. But there's a couple of things that you brought up there, Vinny. And, the thing with Trump, I mean, if you said to most people, do you realize that the United States of America is a country born of treason? They wouldn't have a clue what you were talking about. Yeah, we'd got our king. Well, it belonged to somebody, but, potentially it was our king who was somehow in charge of America or the Americas. Because we sent an army over there to invade it at some point. So somehow that makes it ours, and that was supposed to be legitimate. And then some people that had been sent there decided, hang on a minute, no, we're going to sign this. We're going to sign this piece of paper that makes us all treason. But trust me, it's how our country's going to go forward. People who then say, "Oh, you can't talk about Trump like that." The country was born of treason.
That's another thing. People don't really care about history. All right, I was thinking about this the other day. Young people in particular, they don't care about history. They haven't been around long enough to actually realize that it actually matters. Either that or people who sit them down like wise elders and stuff like that. Because I was just thinking about the mystical nature of what I'm doing. I've traveled around. I've spoken to people all over the world. I've sat with wise men. I've sat with tribal elders, and all of this kind of stuff. And shut up and listen. Basically, that's the
exactly right. Exactly.
How the hell are you going to learn unless you shut up and listen to the people who've already seen stuff, have already done stuff, that kind of thing. And it's been sort of a bit of a challenge for me to just sort of get my head around how separate I am, with my conscience and my intellect and stuff like that from the rest of the general public. There's a lot of things that I know that the general public don't, and there's a lot of things that I would not do because they're wrong that the general public absolutely will. And so there's this huge disconnect, and it's kind of like it reminds me of my entire life, just not getting along with people, not understanding what their buzz is, why they're motivated to do what they're doing or not do what they should be doing. That kind of thing. It's over a long period of time never really made a terribly large amount of sense to me. And now that I've discovered what mind control is, what government does, what public schooling does, what the mainstream media's job really is, there's a whole bunch of people who go, "Oh, I can't believe people can think that." Why not? It's pretty obvious. They were brainwashed, mind controlled, and then they were propagandized. And voila, there you go.
And I'm sure it took me a long time to. I seriously didn't speak to myself for 2 years. When I came across all this, I was in finance for over 20 years, and then when I realized about the money, I'm serious when I say I didn't talk to myself for 2 years, right? And so now I'm in this fortunate position or unfortunate position that my best mate Jason put me in, because it's him that gave me the kick up the bum to look down the rabbit hole, that I know all this stuff. And I got to know it really, really quick. I was fortunate. Most people who come to this way of thinking do so because something really, really bad has happened to them. Somebody has shit on them from an almighty height. I was lucky. I just got a mate who just kept chipping away and chipping away and chipping away at me. But once I'd got my head around it, and then you get this terrible urge to tell everybody and anybody who will listen, whether it's in a toilet, a supermarket, a petrol station, wherever, anything. And somebody said to me, "You're mad." And I can remember actually saying to them, "I'm pleased you said that, because in an insane world, I hope I am mad." Because I don't know about you, but I feel like I don't belong in this world, because my brain doesn't work how this world that we're all presented with happens. It doesn't make any sense to me because of everything that you've just said in the last 10 minutes.
Vinny,
oh, go ahead.
Sorry, I wanted to get back to the Christchurch shooting, and just something that I wanted to bring up. What I wanted to ask, because we were talking about Patriot Act, and we were talking about stuff like that. Now, when the Patriot Act came out, I think it was in October after 9/11, so it was only like a month later. This huge document came out. Was it the same there? Were there huge documents of laws that were been written up in such a short period of time that it weren't possible for anybody to even start reading it before they voted on it? And because
it was already ready. Yeah, they'd tried to introduce a gun ban approximately, I think it was between 3 and 6 months before the shooting happened. And then the shooting happened, and they go, pass the gun ban. And it's convenient because in New Zealand, we're a parliamentary dictatorship. Now, what that means is once you're in power, you're the dictator, and you can pass any laws you want. Doesn't matter what anybody else wants. Doesn't matter what the votes are like or anything like that. There's this thing called passing laws under urgency. Oh, it's urgent. We need to pass it now. There you go, everybody. Gun rights, gone. Free speech, gone. Internet freedom, gone. Enjoy. All right, it was just, this will really keep us safe from terrorists.
That clearly depends on the definition of terrorist and whether that terrorist is a politician, which are the real terrorists, or a terrorist that's a perceived terrorist.
Well, I mean, when you use the word definition, I'm using the literal definition in the Webster's dictionary, which is communism, fascism, they're systems of government, and terrorism is also a system of government. How does that system of government get defined? Well, you terrorize your citizens into going along with your frickin' agenda, by turning up to their house with the cops 5 times after you question their official frickin' narrative.
Yeah. Yeah.
I love terrorism.
So all the hallmarks were there that they knew that this event were going to happen. That this particular, because all the legislation had all been written up before, or was it dug up?
And they had drills on the day. It's not only did they have the legislation prepared, not only did they have the algorithms prepared to just take me out a live stream in the middle of it, but it's just such a interesting thing. It was a blitzkrieg, I think. They just basically went, all right, let's get rid of their rights. We don't like it anymore, because Jacinda Ardern's, whose common name is Comrade Ardern, she come from basically a Freemason family. Her father was the chief of police in New Zealand. He was 40-year policing career. He went on to become the High Commissioner to the island nation of Niue, which is under New Zealand jurisdiction. And it seemed to me that she was just a neoliberal plant groomed from the start to put in there. I mean, she got a Freemason scholarship in PR from Waikato University. She worked for Tony Blair in London for the Better Business Institute, which aimed to cut red businesses for huge corporations in the EU and strangle small businesses with red tape inside Britain. All right, that was one of her jobs. She was also there as part of an investigation team, quote unquote, to investigate a huge Freemason sexual abuse scandal that was happening in London at the time. And her resultant investigation conveniently found nothing. No, there's no high-level Freemasons in the police that are abusing children left, right, and centre, bro. No. That's just a conspiracy theory. And
Nothing to see here.
Okay, so in the 1950s, a recording surfaced, and I think I only just saw it this year or maybe last year, where it talked about the formation of the Illuminati and how it actually continues to operate. And this was in the 1950s on United States public radio. They're very, very concerned about the Illuminati and Freemasons taking over back then. Not so much anymore, because you know why? They've already taken over.
That's right.
Okay, so this is how they do it. They get young people from prestigious families that are well connected with the establishment, then they send them overseas for internationalist training, and then they bring them back to their home country where they will become a leader and will influence the country for globalist policies. Okay, and you look at Jacinda Ardern, Freemason scholarship, worked in England, worked for the Freemason police and Better Business Bureau and all of that kind of stuff, comes back here. She's mentored by Helen Clark and David Shearer, respectively, who are both big UN lovers, and Helen Clark even a member of the Club de Madrid, which is a former country leader club, basically. You have to be formally the leader of a country in order to think this thing, and you have to pay $10,000 a year via credit card in order to be part of the Club de Madrid. What's your stated goals there, Club de Madrid? Well, we want to end national sovereignty and freedom and have a world government, you know. You just, okay. How come nobody's ever heard of this? Well, that's why. And then you got Parliamentarians for Global Action as well, which David Shearer was a member of. So was Helen Clark. And these are Jacinda Ardern's mentors, by the way. And you go, okay, what's Parliamentarians for Global Action? Well, you have to pay by credit card about $10,000 in order to join. You have to be an elected member of Parliament in a democratic country. And then what's your goals there? Well, our goal is to end sovereignty and sell all the national assets and strategic assets to foreign corporations and privatize everything and bring about a one world government. Okay. So you mean every single parliamentary member that has been in control of the country since 1967 has belonged to one or two of these globalist groups and has been implementing globalist policy regardless of what the people want? Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Okay, I kind of see through the ruse here.
I mean, Vinny, for me, the JFK in history was the big turning point. Up to that point, even though there were people who were trying to do things in the background, it kind of was almost like the president was still in charge in the US. But since JFK, absolutely not.
And what's interesting though is people are still talking about JFK these days. Now, wasn't Trump supposed to release some kind of JFK documents? What happened to that?
That just never happened, did it? It just, well, nothing to see here. Just forget about that one. Let's talk about something else.
Well, what about the new investigation into 9/11 that he said that he had lost? What happened to that? You see, it doesn't matter what you hear in an election cycle. You're getting promises, and if you've got somebody who doesn't have a track record of keeping their promises, then you're being foolish, I think. And I think that's what happened is we all got fooled. By all, I mean the people who are not anarchists. I think anarchists didn't get fooled by the election. They never get fooled by an election because they completely ignore them.
Yep. I had the lady from the here in England, Vinny, we've got something called the Electoral Register. And what they effectively do is once a year, they'll send you a form. Now, it's addressed to the occupier. Well, I'm not occupying anything. I'm here quite peacefully, thank you very much. My landlord loves me. I pay rent. And they put your address on it, and the return address is a PO box. So they send you this form, with mail fraud because there's no proper name on it and there's no proper return address on it. But inside, there's this form that you need to fill in and sign to say that you will be on the electoral register so that they can then charge you a monthly council tax to put a streetlight outside your house and to empty your dustbin, which is somewhere round about, on average, I would say, for the average sort of house that most people live in, about £100 a month. If you're in a bigger and more expensive house, more. Now, this electoral register, they sell it to you and they say things like, but you'll be able to vote. Ooh, can't wait for that. But of course, me being me, I haven't filled this bloody thing in for years. So, and of course, they just keep sticking them through your letterbox. And then eventually, the very nice lady on a Saturday morning comes and knocks on my door. Now, I was still jet lagged. I just got back from 6,000 miles away. And I was expecting a parcel. And this lady knocked on my door and said, "Hello, I'm from the electoral register." And I said, I thought you was bringing me a parcel. Now, I've got notices on my door, removal of implied right of access. Don't put anything through my letterbox because if you do, I'm going to charge you £1,000. All the usual stuff. And normally I would have gone through the whole rigmarole. And she said, "You've got to fill this form." And I just went, "No, I haven't. And don't leave it because I'm not filling it in. Goodbye." I couldn't even be asked to have a conversation with her or educate her in any way. Just could not be bothered.
Yeah, sometimes you just don't have the energy, eh?
Yeah, and I just thought, I'm just going to waste my time. And I could have said to her, "Look, read the notice and then decide if you want to put that through the letterbox, because it's not North East Derbyshire Council that I'm going to come to. It's you." I didn't even get to any of that because I just couldn't be asked in the end. I just couldn't be bothered anymore.
I just wanted to clear something up. I've seen, I might be very wrong, but when you talked about the JFK files that were supposed to be released by Trump, I do believe there were some that were released by Trump, and I've seen a video by Jerry Croft on it where he's analysing a lot of the new information that's in there. So anybody who knows me knows I do watch a lot of Jerry Croft stuff. He's a scientist. He's a psych professor emeritus, and he does these really good. In fact, he did a great one on crop circles that I watched when I were in hospital, and it blew me away. So Jerry Croft. He's a guy. So, but I just wanted, and I'm not trying to defend Trump in any way, shape, or form, apart from he may have released some stuff. So we should at least give him credit for that.
Yeah, well, that's what's problematic is that a lot of people make claims that Trump's done this or Trump's done that, and my first question is, really, did you read what he did? No, you didn't. Okay. Did you talk to anybody who was anywhere near fucking close to it? No. You didn't. Okay, so that's what's problematic about the Trump thing is it's all a belief structure. I believe he did that. I believe he did that. Have you seen any evidence? No. Did you even go looking for the evidence? No. I just believed it. And so I'm still waiting for a Trump supporter to show me anything he's actually done. All right, like this is my one request. I keep asking that, and I keep getting no answers. Just show me one thing he's actually done that you can prove. Where's the document? Where's the this, that, and the other? And so far, what are we? Nearly 4 years on now from the Trump presidency. I have not gotten a single piece of evidence from anybody, from any one thing that they claim Trump has actually done, that they actually looked into. Not one in 4 years. It's crazy. Instead, what happens is they just go, "Oh, Vinny, you must support Hillary." And it's just like, she should be in jail.
She should be in jail, and Bernie Sanders should have run.
It's just like Hillary should be in jail. You know why? Because Trump said that she should be in jail. And is she? No, she isn't. Oh, what did Trump do the second he got all your power after you voted for him? He said, "Oh, she's a really nice person. I love her. Don't worry, that was just campaign rhetoric and stuff like that." Scammed immediately. Like, I think it was, I ignored the entire election of Donald Trump, ignored it completely until the day he actually got the nomination. Okay. And then I go, okay, who's he appointed to his cabinet? Because everybody's like, "Oh, he's so anti-globalist. He's so against the New World Order." Who did he appoint as his cabinet? oh, a whole bunch of dark occultists, Freemasons, military-industrial complex people, and people who are members of the Trilateral Commission, the Council on Foreign Relations, who've attended the Bilderberg Group and stuff like that. Without exception.
Nothing to see here.
Without exception. And
Yep.
I was just like, this took me a minute. Like, it took me about approximately 60 seconds. The name of the cabinet member plus CFR. That's a hit. Name of the cabinet member plus Trilateral Commission. That's a hit. Name of the cabinet member plus Freemason. That's a hit. Okay, this is how much investigation it takes. It takes minutes.
Yep.
And people have taken years of ignoring research and still attempting to go, oh, well, he's the be-all and end-all. And I've got just a few words to say about that. Make Israel great again. Okay? It's not... It's not about America. He's working for Israel.
It's irrelevant what colour tie they wear. They are all controlled by Israel. And you know, if anybody ever says to me, "Oh, yeah, but you can't really be an anarchist because, you know, you've got to have politics." Why? Why have we got to have politics? And it makes no sense to me, because when you've got Bernie Sanders who beats Hillary in every single thing, yet she is the one put forward. Think, hang on a minute there. So that means politics is a load of bollocks. Okay. And then look at what we've got in the UK. 650 of the most useless wankers ever to grace the steps of Westminster have taken 3.5 years to do absolutely nothing. And then the buffoon that they've got supposedly in charge looks more of a cock than Donald Trump does. And that's it. That's what politics has got to offer the world. Really?
Yeah. Well, I'm still waiting on the outcome of the 14th referendum on Brexit.
Yeah.
I swear it's the last one. It's the last one.
How is it perceived, Brexit, over there in New Zealand? You know,
I got into an argument with a comedian at the club one night. Actually, went into see Steve Hughes, greatest Australian comedian living today, in my opinion, and especially
I've seen him on YouTube. Yeah,
me too.
And you should watch my interview with him, man. It was crack up, bro. Really good. There was this young British comedian guy there, glasses, little bow tie and stuff like that. He goes, "Oh, you're one of those." He was like giving Steve crap, and he was just saying, "Oh, you support fascism, or whatever." And I go, "Yeah, but you support socialism, and you do realize that fascism is like the Nazis were the National Socialist German Workers' Party, right? And you're a socialist. How come you're criticizing the fascists when you're one of them?"
Exactly right.
And he got really angry with me, and he goes, "Oh, you must be one of those Brexit supporters." And you mean the people who believe in democracy, that give the people what they vote for, that kind of thing? Yes, I do believe the people should have what they voted for. Do you not believe that? Do you believe that the UK should be a dictatorship and all of that kind of stuff? And this huge amount of adrenaline was starting to pulse through me, just and I was sitting there at the table just going, just calming myself down. And then I started to be really, really calm, and was just keep talking to him about this. And he go, "No, that's not actually the case." And he goes, "Well, you did it." And I was just like, "Well, now you're shifting the goalposts, and that's not how you're supposed to do it." And he was just getting more angry and more angry and more triggered and stuff like that, because he didn't know what he was talking about. Okay? If you're against Brexit, the chances are very good that you don't know what you're talking about. You know, and I feel that this is basically where all the politicians come from. They come from a population who doesn't know what they're talking about. So when they go into Parliament, "I'm a politician now," but that still doesn't mean you know what you're talking about, bro. You got any qualifications? You got some meteorological degree that I'm not aware of as you pass in all the successive climate change legislation to carbon tax every single human activity, bro? You got any of that knowledge? No. But I have advisors that were working for incredibly massive corporations that have vested interests in the same things that they're giving you advice on. Yeah. It's just okay. I suddenly understand why politicians mess things up and why people think that they're stupid. It's because there's a good chunk of them that are the dumbest of the dumbest people that you've ever met in your life. mixed in there are the worst of the worst, barely human creatures that have ever existed. Psychopaths, pedophiles, liars, thieves. These people are tyrants, and they need only the opportunity to bring out their tyranny. And we are the ones who grant those opportunities to them. And that's why they convince us that they're stupid, that Vinny, they're not evil.
A few years ago, Jason asked me a question, and it was this: what was Tony Blair's first job? Now, he asked me this question after reading, I don't know if it was Tony Blair's memoirs or another politician's memoirs. And in true UK style, he will have read this sat on the toilet chapter by chapter, numb legs included. And he asked me this question: what was Tony Blair's first job? And Jason, the answer is?
I can't remember that. That were ages ago. It were his memoirs, weren't it? Well, that's been
Alistair Campbell.
Alistair Campbell. That lying bastard. I can't remember. What were it? Prime
Minister.
Oh, right. Okay.
That's the first actual job that he had. It was his first job.
Wasn't he like there was some kind of rumor going around that he was actually a sex toy or something like that for the elites, and then they put him in Parliament or whatever. I don't know anything about that, but
he's a complete cock that should be in prison. But you know,
yeah. And here's the thing as well: where do these people come from? They come from ordinary families. They come from public education. They come from all of these other kind of things, and we wonder, and there's a big question that goes around. A lot of people say they see this way: oh, Tony Blair, he lied about frickin' Iraq war that killed 1 million Iraqis, and now 1/4 of their babies are born deformed because of the depleted uranium munitions. How can he sleep at night? Because he doesn't have a conscience to keep him awake. Okay. Yep. When you've been pissed off, ladies and gentlemen, when you're trying to go to bed that night and you're just arguing with somebody on Facebook just before that, you can't get to sleep, can you? Because your conscience just keeps you awake. No, I can't go to sleep. Somebody on the internet is wrong. And, you know, that's what a conscience does for you, ladies and gentlemen. When you're a psychopath, you don't have that.
Vinny,
I was just like, let me finish this point. I just raped 14 children today. It's just like that, man.
Yeah.
Serious.
There was a quite famous interviewer on the BBC, a guy called Andrew Marr, and quite famously, a few years ago, he had a stroke, but quite quickly got almost straight back on. Even though he'd had quite a bad stroke, he got straight back on and continued to do his job, which was interviewing politicians and hitting them with some quite digging questions, but not to the point where it would upset them. He was sort of on the edge. He wasn't a complete twat when he was interviewing them. He was kind of digging, but not really, really hard. And he interviewed Tony Blair. And you used to be able to see this on YouTube, but it's not there anymore. And he said, I forget the numbers, so I'm going to pick some out of the air, but this was the gist of it. So, Mr. Blair, knowing that there were no weapons of mass destruction, how does it feel having killed millions of innocent women and children? And his reply was, oh, Andrew, I think you'll find it was only 200,000.
Yeah.
Like that fucking makes it all right. And that's what you're dealing with. Psychopath.
Yeah. I can just imagine somebody busting into my house. Vinny, you've killed 14 people. You've got them in your walls. And I go, no, it was only 12.
Yeah, exactly right. Exactly.
But it's the case of one death is a tragedy, 1 million deaths is a statistic.
That's right, yeah.
And it, you know, we're so whatever people think of Tony Blair at that time, and I know my own mother were the same. She thought the sun shone out of his arse because, you know, as far as she was concerned, they were doing a lot better than they had done previously under conservative governments. And I was kind of like saying, God, just for God's sake, mother, this man's evil. But I mean, if you knew my mother, there's no telling her. So, but yeah, you can't just thanks. My wife laughed in the background the door. It was dog or something.
I didn't say a word, Caroline.
But yeah, it's just you've got them there by the sound of it as well. You think of, we don't see very much in New Zealand. It's this little corner of the world. In Australia and New Zealand, it's like this little corner of the world, which is right. It's the other side of the world to us.
It's
I know
12,000
it's
miles
quite
away, yeah.
literally, but you know what I mean. It's a world away, so we don't really see very much. But I understand from what I've read, that the New World Order global agenda is sort of ramped up even more there. You know, the testing grounds. I mean, there's probably a reason why they tested nuclear bombs, you know, in the South Pacific on these islands, and they're perhaps doing the same thing socially with the Australian population and the New Zealand population. What would you say to that, Vinny?
I think we're always constantly being experimented on. The big experiment that's going on right now is whether or not the public will allow themselves to have poisoned water. Okay, so what happened was we had the very first water table assessment in New Zealand history just a couple of weeks ago. You know what they found? 90% of our groundwater has pesticides in it, and not just like a little bit, a lot. And it's not just pesticides either. It's also solvents and heavy metals and things like that. So this is New Zealand, clean green New Zealand, 90% pesticides in the groundwater. Okay, that's frickin' scary. News reported on it and that was it. That was the report. Nothing.
Yeah.
Okay, and the public sitting there going, okay, we've got water poison now that we all have to deal with. What's the result of drinking all of these poisons and things like that in our water all the time? Well, you're going to have huge cancer rates. You're going to have huge problems with dementia and all sorts of other different problems and things like that. Oh, okay, well, let's have a look at the Ministry of Health statistics. What's going on there? Well, we've got a 1 in 1 cancer rate. A 1 in 1 cancer rate in New Zealand? And you're like, yeah. Well, what do you mean? Everybody gets cancer? No, not everybody gets cancer. Some people don't get cancer, and some people get cancer twice, 3 times, 4 times, something like that. All right, so we are incredibly unhealthy. We are in a dangerous situation. And how did all those pesticides get in the groundwater, you ask? Well, a couple of factors. Number one is just the conventional farming practices that we're doing. We didn't realize, did we, that if you pour poison all over the thing to fertilize it and what have you, that all of that stuff eventually ends up in the groundwater. So we've been chemically farming for quite some time, like a good 50 years or something like that, using pesticides left, right, and center, and now we're paying the price for that. But the other part of it is compound 1080. Now, this compound is banned for outdoor use in every single country in the world except New Zealand and Australia. All right. Now, in New Zealand, what we do is we get about $50 million of it per year, minimum, and we dump it into our rivers, streams, lakes, and the bush areas. Okay, because we've got what are called possums. All right, there's possums in our bush. Therefore, we need to poison all the water supplies, and we need to poison everybody's bushlands and things like that, and get all those contaminants into the soil, get all those contaminants into the water. And you're like, well, that sounds like a lot of poison. $50 million worth of poison per year dumped by a helicopter into your frickin' waterways? What kind of effect is that? How much of an effect does it have when it's in the water? And you go, well, it's an endocrine disruptor, okay, which means anything to do with your reproduction or your cell reproduction or anything like that will be affected by this. And it's an endocrine disruptor in parts per trillion. Now, when the government tests the water, they only test it in parts per billion. So there's no threat because they never come up with any traces of it. All right. So that's one thing that's really getting people down. And we had Emil Leaf, who's a great 1080 activist. He was cruising around the country with big flags and things like that. And he went to Auckland on the side of the North Shore. just across that bridge that those on the live stream can see behind me. And he was tackled by a bunch of police to prevent him from continuing his protest march against 1080 going over the bridge. He didn't do anything. The police weren't charged or got any consequences against it. So the government is essentially trying to shut this down. Now, what we found is that rivers and streams and things like that, yes, they are being contaminated, but they're being contaminated in small rural areas. So what will happen is, for example, the community where Emil Leaf and Alan Gurdon, the two 1080 activists, you can watch their shows on my channel, they were in Blackball in west coast of the South Island here in New Zealand. And I think it was a day or so after a big 1080 drop on the ridge just above them, there were huge amounts of miscarriages in the town. Like, a whole bunch of women lost their babies. A whole bunch of guys lost their dogs. A whole bunch of guys lost their health as well, and now they've got permanent health disorders and things like that. It's just like they drop it, entire community screwed. They go to the doctors. The doctor said, "Oh, I have no idea what it is." All right. Well, what about if we test for 1080? Well, it's really expensive to test for 1080 because it can affect you in parts per trillion, so it's too expensive to bother testing. Agenda 21, get people off the land, contaminate their land, contaminate their groundwater, contaminate their everything that they're living off, kill all the animals in the bush so that they can't live off of that. Then they're all going to be forced into the mega cities that are all highly surveilled, and then they'll be slaves. Okay, so that's sort of like makes 1080 sense to me. And a lot of people don't know this. They haven't even got the slightest inkling.
You just got to look at Flint in Michigan
every day.
Yeah, you just got to take a look at Flint in Michigan, and what they did to the water there. And there are people there, and they say to them, "Well, why don't you just move out?" Well, really, who'd buy your house if you can't even drink the water? Because where they switch, they've got Lake Michigan, which is like the purest water from one of the 7 big aquifers on the planet. No, we can't give you that water. We'll give you all this shit out of the river that's been contaminated with everything and anything because we want to contaminate you. So this whole town, Flint, Michigan, and when they all complained, what did they do? Well, what we'll do, we'll have a month where the army are practicing and doing all these things. And where should we do it? I know. We'll start throwing live rounds around Flint in Michigan. And that was their answer. And that's what they did. And you're right, get them off the land, get them in the mega cities. That's what they want to do.
And I think, the English people sort of see this a lot more clearly than the Americans do because the English have grown up with 2000 AD comics and Judge Dredd in the megacities and things like that. So that when somebody says megacities, you guys actually have an image in your head of what a megacity looks like, how brutal it actually is, how terrible the employment opportunities are going to be, how bad the health is going to be, how overt the enforcement is going to be. And I was just wondering, how many Freemasons are part of 2000 AD comics who've been trying to basically lull people into this kind of thing. This is a fantasy. This isn't real. We're just slowly prepping you for it with predictive programming,
The thing is, most Freemasons get to level 1, 2, or 3, maybe 4. And if you're a bank manager, wow, you might even get to 5. You effectively, you go into the local private members club with your mates. And you're in a society with secrets, not a secret society. But once you start to get into the nitty-gritty, the guys at the top, it's a big pyramid, need-to-know basis, and as corrupt as fuck.
Well, that's how they managed to keep it secret this whole time is with several levels of initiation. Okay. Hey, you get tapped on the shoulder. Hey, brother, we've got a new initiation for you. You're gonna come to the York right now, and there's only one thing that we have to do though. We have to sacrifice a goat. And the guy's like, sacrifice a goat? And you're like, yeah. And you go like, oh, that sounds a little bit wrong. We were just kidding about the goat. No worries. Just go back and be a porch mason. And we'll go tap somebody else on the shoulder. And as soon as they find somebody who's like, sacrifice a goat? Yeah. And then you step up the thing, might go from a chicken to a goat to a horse or whatever the hell. And eventually, and this is what James Robert Wright, who's the highest level Freemason whistleblower in recent times, biggest whistleblower for over 100 years, in fact, he has said that what the initiation ceremonies are designed to do, the purpose behind them, is to take away people's spiritual defenses against demon possession. So you've got all of these defenses up as a normal human shell. Your soul's very nicely situated inside your meat suit. And what they try to do is they try to influence your mind and get you to become less attached to yourself. And so eventually they can pull you out and stuff something else in. And that's what he says is the goal behind the 33rd degree, is to create human hosts for interdimensional demons. And I was like, whoa, that sounds real dark. And then yesterday I was watching Jeffrey Doherty, who's the Christian whistleblower. He spent hundreds of thousands of hours reading the Bible and stuff like that. And what he's found is that the Catholic Church, when they say, accept Jesus as your savior, that's actually an occult initiation ceremony. Whereas you accept another entity inside yourself, you get pulled out and another one gets stuffed in. And I was like, whoa. And I did that yesterday. I was like, he said, you can get rid of these entities. You can reclaim what is yours. This body is mine. This soul is mine. And I'm not going to allow another entity to have it, or me, or control over that, right? And I thought, man, that's quite an interesting concept there. So I tried it out on the deck just after watching that show, and I feel really different now. I was thinking back to when I was a baby, and my parents had me frickin' what's it called? Baptized?
I had all that crap.
Yeah, and then I was thinking to myself, what if that was actually the reason why I feel so crap my entire life and found it so difficult to get along with people and had such a tough life and stuff like that, because at that point an entity had actually entered me as a child. It had taken over my body and I wasn't me anymore, right? That was just the thought that I had. First communion, taking the blood in the cup and all of that kind of stuff. It's like, man, these are occult rituals that are designed to take my soul away from me and my control. And I was just like, I cast you out, demon. I cast you out. And I felt so much better.
The thing that's always got me with religion, Vinny, is that if you believe, even if we all said it was all true, the Catholic Church and the so-called Queen of England, with the stroke of a pen, could on a check, could do away with world poverty in as long as it would take to sign that check, and they won't. Even if we believe that money was real and it wasn't really created but in debt, but even if we believe that money was real, they could just sign that away. Done. So is she really wonderful? Is she, Al? Is the Catholic Church wonderful? No. But, if you need somebody to really, really point out the obvious, then I'm sorry, but you deserve to be indoctrinated.
Yeah. I'm just wondering about that. I mean, does anybody really deserve to be indoctrinated? Sorry, go ahead, Jason.
I was just going to put a point in. Yesterday, I went to an appointment to see the specialist that's dealing with me at the moment, and as it's cardiovascular, most of the people sat in the waiting room, they were mostly old people. Well, just as they got
including you.
Sorry,
including you.
Yeah, including me. Yeah, but they got this TV on in the corner that had got BBC News on it, and it was just showing the Queen coming out to open Parliament, and she's in in that thing that she's got that carriage and what have you. And I looked up. I just got there as it went, and I looked up at the television and I went, God, look at that scrounging old boot And all the old people around me, the face, look on the faces were like, oh, as you can't say that. I'm saying to Danielle, because I love that when you get an audience and they're really not supposed to be listening. They're actually just overhearing what you're saying to somebody. And I'm just saying that carriage, if they melted it down and sold it on as gold, that'd be enough to eradicate poverty, in the third world, and it's all for her. And she's sat on this, and she's German, and even she's not even British. I'm getting all these things out for these older people, but people are indoctrinated, and there's another generation above us. My father once said to me, I really like royal family. I think they're really, they're really good. They really do well for our nation. And I said, for God's sake, Dad, what is wrong with you? What the hell are you saying? These
My
people.
favourite one that they say is, yeah, but imagine how much money they bring in with tourism, and you think, what? Hang on a minute. So all these Americans that come over here between Easter and August Bank Holiday, all wearing their lovely white, pristine white plimsolls, because that's how you can tell an American tourist in London after Easter, because they all wear white shoes. Okay. And that's not a racist thing to say. Somebody once told me I was racist for saying that. It's just true.
Yeah, because Americans are a race.
They're all stood there outside Buckingham Palace going, yeah, but it'd be much better if the Queen was actually in there, wouldn't it? Yeah. No, it's a fucking building.
Yeah, I remember one time I got stood down from school because me and a mate were given this Australian chick crap about her accent, and I was stood down from school for racism. And I was just like, well, hold on, Australians aren't a race. You can't just you can get Australian citizenship. Can you get black citizenship? Can you get Asian citizenship? Like, I'm Asian now. No, they're not a race. It's a country.
Of course it is. Of course it is. Oh, just one thought. Actually, just while we go on to Australia, Vinny, I've just come back from a month in Thailand, and there's generally a bunch of people from all over the world that all kind of seem to be in this same place at the same time, regular visitors. And there's a guy that I've spoken to before. His name's Lee, and he had a really interesting conversation. There's a guy who calls himself Sausage, and a guy who calls himself Lee. These bad guys are both Australian, but didn't know each other, and I knew both of them. So the three of us, well, there was probably about 8 of us, sat around in a bar, all with some of this, having a chat. Now, Lee owns a bus company, a coach company. Sausage owns a bus company, a coach company, and he's probably got about 100. All these school contracts for kids and whatever. But if you say to him, Sausage, what do you do? He'll say, I drive a bus. Now, Lee is an airline pilot. He drives an A380 Airbus. But if you say to Lee, what do you do? He'll say, I'm a bus driver. So they both play this down. So so I got them into this conversation, and then eventually they kind of admitted to each other that, one owns about 100 of these bloody great coaches for schools, and the other one actually drives or flies an A380 Airbus. And I said to Lee, tell me about 9/11 and these planes. And he just looked up at me and he just said, never happened. And that's all he said. Never happened. With the planes and what they were supposed to have done, he just said, and that thing that was supposed to hit the Pentagon, I don't know what that was, but it was certainly on a plane. And that's all he said. Never happened.
What somebody posted a question in chat room earlier on, and I wanted to ask you, what's the impact of 5G and what's the plans with 5G at the moment in New Zealand? I heard a very interesting thing the other day, which I'll share with everybody, which I don't think many people have heard. But go on. What's it like 5G wise in New Zealand?
Well, they're basically installing it left, right, and centre as fast as they can, but there's a lot of resistance out here in New Zealand. We've managed to stop it from getting installed, I believe, in Coromandel, which is a smaller section of the country. And the rest of the people, like I operate the No 5G NZ page, and we've got 5G Free NZ and a number of other groups and stuff like that that have opened up around the country trying to resist this. I'm not sure how much success we're going to have at the end of it, but I know that it's basically it's game over. Once 5G gets installed, it's frickin' game over. And there's three reasons for that: the health, the mental health, and the surveillance. Okay, so let me explain what I mean by that. Number one, they're millimeter waves, which is what's called non-ionizing radiation, which means it doesn't penetrate the skin. And what that does is it heats up the skin and all your cells there as well, deforms them, irradiates them, and then they keep going around your blood system and stuff like that. So that becomes cancer. Okay, that's number one. If you've got 5G exposure, you're going to get cancer, real bad cancer too, and it's going to be everywhere. And the second part of it is the surveillance. So the only reason why we've got 5G as opposed to 4G or anything like that being obsessed over right now is because the bandwidth. All right. So how much bandwidth do you need to monitor this live stream right now? Maybe a couple of megs a second or something like that. Somebody can be sitting there. You could have an algorithm or something like that to red flag analysis. Not that big. But what if you had to surveil every single show? What if you had to surveil every single person in real time? You're talking huge amounts of bandwidth, right? You're talking gigabytes a second. What's the speed of 5G? Gigabytes a second. We can surveil everybody all the time in real time. Okay, so that means you're going to have the China social credit system coming in. All right. Yep. So you're going to go like, okay, well, I'm walking down the street. Man, I really don't like the government and stuff like that. All of a sudden you get a text on your phone. Beep, 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 beep. Oh, that's very naughty. You can't use the trains anymore. And you're like, crap, I really don't like the government now. Beep, 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 beep. Now you can't fly either. It's going to be good surveilled in real time. And the last part is the mental health of it. So when you've got non-ionizing radiation bombarding your brain, your ability to think, your ability to not be depressed or not feel anxiety is gone, more or less. So even if you wanted to resist the surveillance, you'd be too depressed or too anxious to do it. Okay? So you can't escape the surveillance, you can't escape the effects on your mind, and you can't escape the effects on your body. All right, that's the whole reason for 5G, complete and utter control of the slave grid, and those that can't be controlled can be killed.
I've never heard anybody put it as accurately and succinctly as that.
Yeah, I get that a lot. And then the last thing in here is it also touches on the mental side of things, but this also comprises the surveillance and the health thing. So the CIA, when they were running MK Ultra using former German mind control scientists that they got after Operation Paperclip in World War II, they started to map the brain. And they started mapping this not just by cutting brains in half and seeing where this part is and that part and what have you. They started mapping brains by drilling holes into the skulls of the subjects, placing electrodes onto particular portions of the brain, and running frequencies through those rods. So you'd have a subject in a chair, and you go, okay, let's try frequency number 1. And the person goes, I'm gonna kill everybody. I'm gonna kill everybody. And okay, that one's rage and murder. Okay, let's try number 2. I feel so afraid. I'm gonna die. That was an incredible fear. What's this one over here? You know, that kind of thing. And they just sat there mapping out what frequency does this, what frequency does that on the human mind. And here's the kicker: all those frequency modulations are embedded in the 5G. Okay, so what that means is you can be specifically targeted, or you could do it to a group of people, or you could do it to whole cities at the same time. You want a city to be so depressed that they don't get out and vote in the next Brexit? You want to have a city so at each other's throats with violence and rage that you have to declare martial law, which is exactly what you want? Oh my God. You got some individual talk radio show host who you really don't like, or you want him to start doing crazy things and stuff like that so people will stop listening to him? Oh, mate, the possibilities are endless. All right. So, as I say, 5G equals game over. We either stop it or it stops us. You know, that's kind of like how serious the situation is. But in saying that, I remember the Fukushima radiation thing, the big scare that we had there and everything like that. And I was like, oh, freaking out about everything. So the world ended. No, okay. What about the oil cano that happened in the Gulf of Mexico? Do you guys remember that? That huge,
or didn't happen? Yeah.
And so you go, oh, that really freaked me out back then when that happened. And I go, oh God, okay, world ended. No, you know. Here's the thing: we tend to panic about things that haven't happened yet. All right. And I want to encourage people to just, remain calm and have a few laughs, swear or something. This is how adults deal with stress.
Yeah. I mean, Jason and I are still waiting to get bird flu and swine flu.
Yeah, well, you'll be waiting some time.
Yeah, I feel like I've been left out of the equation because I never got either of those two. Just on what you were talking about with 5G, Vinny, I completely agree with everything you just said. And as I said before, it's not very often you get anybody who says it as succinctly as that. And for that, seriously, thank you. Because if anybody don't get what 5G is, that is it. Mm. I've got a faulty electricity meter. In other words, the readout isn't working. Apparently, this thing is still tracking how much electricity I have got to pay for. But the actual readout is knackered. So the company arranged to come and fit me a new one through some third party, and then they cancelled at the last minute. Then I got an email saying, don't worry, he's coming on such and such a day. And I sent him an email and said, look, if he comes with a smart meter, he's going to be turned away because you're not coming near my property with one of those. Oh, don't worry. So this guy turns up and says, yeah, I'm here to fit your new meter. Okay. Yeah, what is it? Well, it's a meter. Right, okay, what is it? Is it a smart meter? Well, yeah, but we won't be switching that bit on. Right, okay.
Oh, crap.
Sorry, mate, I'm sure you're a really nice guy, but you're not fitting that on my property. So have the day off. Have the day off on me. And he went, what, so you don't want it fitting? He said, you can't get hold of normal meters anymore. So I went, wait there. Got my tablet. Bum, 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 bum. Electricity. I went, mate, the £34.80 on Amazon. And he said, yeah, but we can't fit them. I went, okay, whatever. What do you want me to do? And I went, have the morning off because you're not fitting that in my house. See ya. I'm sure you're a really nice guy and it's nothing personal, but, see you soon. Cheers. Mm. So he then sat outside in his van scratching his head. Then I get a phone call saying, we can't get an engineer to you today. Sorry, no, the engineer's been here. But sadly, he got turned away because he arrived with a smart meter.
Yeah.
Right. Okay. Right. So he's there. Well, he was, but he's gone. Right. Well, is there a problem? Only that you brought a smart meter and I told you not to. Right. So then, anyway, long story short, it's now got to the point where they're coming tomorrow morning, between 8 and 12. And I sent them an email saying, look, every time you book with me and you then either don't come or you bring the wrong piece of equipment, I have to block out 4 hours in my diary where I can't work because I have to be home. Now, my hourly rate to them is £85 an hour. So I said, if he comes tomorrow and he's going to have a smart meter, I'm going to bill you for 4 hours work that I was unable to do. And when you don't pay the invoice, I will take you to court. And they actually sent back and said, okay. When I asked for them to understand my email, they said, yes, we understand. Okay. So let's see what tomorrow morning brings and see whether he tries to bring a smart meter or not. The other one was, while I was going out through airport security, you can imagine me in an airport security, can't you? Getting the scanner. No. So this very nice guy at Birmingham Airport, last time, They opened my passport and went, Raconteurs News, and read it when I refused to get in the scanner. This time the guy said, why won't you get in the scanner? And I just said, we wouldn't even agree on the question. So you do your pat down thing, and I'm completely cool with that. I've come with loads of times. I know you want to do your job. I'm not getting in your scanner. But I stand next to it all day, he said. He said, it's perfectly safe. And I went, yeah, so were cigarettes in 1960. And he said, but these millimicrowaves, they don't penetrate your skin. So I said, okay. One question is then, how does it scan me then? But my second question is, where does all this radiation go? If it's not going in me, where's it going? What do you mean? I went, I don't mean anything. I'm asking the question. Or what I want you to do is ask yourself the question, because you've told me that you're standing next to this thing all day. Can I finish my pat down and go now? And as I kind of left and finished, you could see him sort of sat there thinking, hang on a minute, this guy might have a bit of a point here. Maybe I ought to look at this. Because they're just told what they have to repeat. And because somebody who's in some kind of perceived higher authority than they are, they just cascade it down like it's normal without any thought process, because they're not capable.
And we have a comment in here in the chat room from Evan Way. He says that MK Ultra is only dead on paper. I strongly suspect it's active on a global scale now.
Yep.
And this was something that we actually put into a script that I was working on called A Werewolf, where this guy, he doesn't like conspiracy theorists, and they're kind of pissing them off with all of their crap online. So he goes to see a psychiatrist to get some drugs so that he doesn't have to think about it. And the psychiatrist has actually given him drugs to turn him into a werewolf and turn him into a weapon. so he actually winds up becoming the victim of a conspiracy, that kind of thing. And within the plot, it actually turns out that the psychiatrist is actually part of a much larger global network that indeed recruits, damages, and then trains, and then sends back out into the world's leaders, the world's journalists, their lawyers, and all of that kind of stuff. Apparently, they've all come through this program, and this is in the script and what have you. But I based that on the MK Ultra things where they were talking about people in hospitals, people in universities, people in ordinary jobs and things like that. They were actually part of MK Ultra. They were doing experiments on human beings and things like that, and feeding all their stuff back to the intel agencies. And now that MK Ultra got exposed, what they did is they just sent it underground, and they had all of their scary MK Ultra psychiatrists and all of their mind control experiments and everything like that. They now just happen in all the mental institutions. Okay, yep. Because all those people in the mental institution, oh, he's trying to get my brain in a jar or something like that. Oh, he must be nuts or whatever. But they do want your brain in a jar.
Yeah, just because you're paranoid doesn't mean they're not really after you.
Yeah, they're after my brain. You know, it's amusing if it wasn't so frickin' scary.
Yeah,
you know,
right.
and that's the thing as well. I mean, I think it was a man named Justin Time. He wrote a book a while back, and he was telling me about this one time when he was locked in a mental institution, and every day he would make sure to play the piano because he knew that if they drugged his food or something like that, he wouldn't be able to play the piano. And he specifically instructed them, don't give me anything, don't put anything in my food and what have you, and I'm going to be testing every day, that kind of thing. And he says that basically when you're in there, you need to get out. But you're not going to get out if you keep acting like who you want to be. You have to pretend like you're something else. And then they think, oh, this guy's no longer a threat. We'll get him out of here now. That's fine. You know, that kind of thing. It reminded me of school. You know, you've got to pretend to be something that you're not so that you simply get accepted and can get the things that you do want. And this is a terrible thing that people are going on. And we've got so many crazy people everywhere nowadays, don't we? How many of them went to psychiatric institutes and got made crazy there? Maybe that was the point. Maybe these people are unwilling and unknown agents that are in our society to make everything look like crazy, to make us stop feeling empathy for each other. You know, it's just a thought. Just a thought.
Yeah, sadly, I've got first-hand knowledge of the inside of a lunatic. Well, they call them hospitals here, but you know, you can call it a hospital ward if you want. But an 18-foot fence topped with barbed wire on the inside is a prison. But they do call them a hospital. We had a great friend, and she might even be listening tonight. And she was imprisoned for a month. Well, actually more than that, but. And we, Jason and I and others managed to get her out after 28 days. And in the mental institution of this country, that's almost unknown to actually, because you normally, once you're in for a month, what they then say is, well, you can either stay voluntary or we'll make you stay for another 6 months. Well, that's not voluntary. That's just an ultimatum, isn't it?
Yeah.
But we did actually get her out after 28 days.
It sounds like you were like trapped in Willy Wonka's factory or something. Nobody ever goes in and nobody ever comes out.
Yeah. You know, but we did manage to get her out using common law and a few other things. But it's even the mental health system used to have things in it where they'd got a little minibus and they'd get the 4 members of staff and 8 patients, let's call them, and they'd take them in a minibus and they'd go to the seaside for the day, or they'd go on a day trip, and they were trying to sort of give them some sense of normality in the open world, but in a secure environment to try and help them. None of that exists anymore. There's no art class. There's nothing to expand their brain. There's no books. All the surfaces are hard and sloped, so you can't sit on a chair arm. It's sloped. All the beds are rock hard and plastic. There are no even light bulbs that you can reach in the ceiling. If anybody says to them, "Oh, this drug that you're giving me, can I have the NICE document, please?" And they go, "You want what?" Sorry. This lady was in a mental hospital and she asked for a copy of the Mental Health Act. And do you know what they told her?
Mm-hmm.
We don't have one. But we might be able to get one to you in a few days.
Right, sure we will.
And that is how ridiculous the system is here. And this lady is... I would say almost I can't think of anybody that I know that is more intelligent. And I genuinely believe that. She really, really is. And I know some pretty intelligent people. I know some very intelligent people, both who would judge their intelligence by the amount of letters they've got after their name, which means nothing, but also people who I genuinely respect as a human being, who have genuine knowledge. And she is probably the cleverest. And even when she was on all the drugs that they were giving her, she was still probably the most intelligent person that I've ever met. And they tried, and she was a whistleblower. And that's what the mental health system is used for over here. If you're a whistleblower, don't worry, what we'll do, we'll just say that you're mentally ill. And then the system that we're going to use to abuse you will give you PTSD. And then what we'll do, we'll get somebody else from the same department to come and help you with your PTSD.
Which we caused.
Yeah, and that's what they do. So the whole system is just upside down. And if anybody ever says to me, you know when I'm sort of talking to people, Vinny, and they kind of, hang on, this guy doesn't think the way I do. And they say, I just think, look, whatever you believe, turn it 180 degrees, and that's what I believe.
I recall when I got busted for cannabis the first time, and I had the first panic attack. Never had one before in my life in the cells, and never been able to get over that kind of thing. So I got complex post-traumatic stress to this day. And that was like, what was it, 10, 12, maybe 10 years ago. 10 years ago. Still suffering with it today. Can't work. Can't go get a job at the government or anything like that. I'm screwed. I mean, the whole reason why I'm doing this show is because if I try to get what I call gainful employment, my body has a freaking panic attack.
Yeah.
Like I'm physically unable to be gainfully employed. So, ladies and gentlemen, please go to thevinnieeastwoodshow.com and start up an automatic payments into the PayPal, the Kiwi Bank, and the Patreon, because there's no other way I can survive, basically. And I basically had to accept that. It was something that I wasn't able to deal with very well at first, but now I'm dealing with it really well by basically avoiding all my triggers. You know?
I deal with things really well by hang on a minute, where are we? There we go. Focus.
With weed.
With weed. Yeah.
Yeah, that was exactly what happened to me as well. It's like, oh man, I got complex post-traumatic stress because I got busted with weed. What helps with that? Weed.
It's true. It's just ridiculous, isn't it? Vinny, when you were talking earlier, we went through the Christchurch thing and 5G. The other one for me that is kind of a global thing is this Greta Thunberg, or whatever she wants to be called.
It's pronounced Greta Thunberg.
Okay. Yeah. I know what I think about it. What is the general? Two questions. What is the general sort of thing in New Zealand? Because that's one reason why we want you on here, to see what's happening 12,000 miles away. But then what's Vinny Eastwood's view on it?
Well, Vinny Eastwood's view is I wanted to convince people 9/11 was an inside job. So what I did is I got this young boy who had like 3 different physiological disorders. He's in a wheelchair. He's all contorted like a pretzel. And he's got like 5 different emotional problems and things like that. And I get him up on the stage and he goes, 9/11 is an inside job. And people go, oh well, that's just terrible. We don't believe that. And I just come up beside him and I say, you can't criticize him. Look how spastic he is. And that is the whole Greta Thunberg thing in a nutshell. You can't criticize her. Look at how spastic she is. Give up your rights. Give up your private property. Give up your national sovereignty. You know, it's the right thing to do because this little mentally ill girl told you to, and you can't criticize her. Beautiful. And then I spoke to some people in New Zealand about that, and they're absolutely enamored. They're like, oh, a retarded girl talking about a mainstream issue in the mainstream media, giving her unlimited coverage and billions of dollars of exposure to the world and stuff like that, and giving them all sorts of like random awards and what have you that she hasn't earned. I love her so much. She's so brave. And yeah, I'm just sitting here going, oh my God, I wish at some point, you know, sometimes I wish this. And then I immediately recuse myself. I sometimes wish that I wasn't so cynical so that I could feel these things, you know. Oh, that's great, isn't she a wonderful little girl and stuff like that? I'd like to feel those dopamine hits, those endorphin rushes and things like that people have when they see things that are lying to them and telling them what they want to hear. I wish I could feel that, but I can't. I just can't, because I'm too cynical and too jaded. I've seen it too many times before. Oh, look, here's another person there coming up. And stop putting people on pedestals, ladies and gentlemen, because as soon as you do, you're eventually going to find out that person you put on a pedestal is human. And that means they've got flaws. And when you find out what those flaws are, and that person comes tumbling off that pedestal, they're going to land on you. And you're going to feel crushed because you're going to feel really stupid. How could I have been so stupid as to believe everything that was going on, you know, that kind of thing. And it's mostly shame, you know. Shame is the reason why a lot of people don't wake up to things, because they think, oh, well, if I admit to this, that means I was stupid, and, you know, I'd rather just keep being stupid, you know, and have nobody find out about it, especially not me. I need to avoid being honest with myself at all times. You know, we've been living in lies at all times. And so why is it any surprise to people that people want to believe lies all the time? You know, it's pretty straightforward. And I feel that what's problematic is that a lot of people have not suffered enough. Okay, I can think about Greta Thunberg. Her dad's an actor, mother's a famous opera singer, was touring the world and stuff like that. Doesn't tour anymore because of the carbon offsets and things like that. It's just stupid. And Greta comes up and goes,
Vinny, come on,
independent. Really, who was
we've got to be scared of carbon. Come on, get with the program.
Get with the programming. And that's the other thing as well. What is carbon, ladies and gentlemen? 6 protons, 6 electrons, 666. Oh, okay, that's the chemical signature of carbon, 666. Isn't that interesting? What's the gas of life? Carbon dioxide. Okay, what happens when you put, like, for example, a whole bunch of people in a, I don't know, in a forest, and you increase the CO2 by double, all right? That forest starts to grow bigger. All the animals within the forest start to get bigger because they've got more to eat. Okay, that's what carbon dioxide does, is the gas of life. And because what's taking over the world, rather, is a death cult, they have specifically made an enemy of life itself. That's what carbon dioxide is. If you're against carbon dioxide, if you're trying to reduce it or something like that, you are killing things when you're doing that. Okay, the reason why the dinosaurs were so huge and so much of that old vegetation and stuff like that back during the Cretaceous and Jurassic periods and things like that was so abundant is because the CO2 levels were like hundreds of times what they are now. Okay, it's not a bad thing, ladies and gentlemen. CO2 is good. Make as much of it as you can. As much as you can.
Well, yeah, because next week, you know, Vinny, over here in the UK, breathing is going to become illegal because you won't be allowed to expel the CO2.
Yeah, well, hopefully that that takes place in Westminster first.
Yeah. Just one thing, just getting back to Greta, whatever her name is.
Thunberg.
Yeah, my own sort of view on this is, now bearing in mind, I've been out of the UK I've been in Asia for a month, been in Thailand. So none of this shit happens. All this stuff just doesn't happen. It's almost, it's in its own little sterile bubble. The king is great and the government are great. And as a guest in that country, that is exactly how I am. You know, I'm a guest in this country, and so the king is great. The bitch that we've got, who calls herself the fucking queen, who isn't, is a complete bastard and should be hung, in my eyes. But I wouldn't say that about a king or a queen of another country that I wasn't sovereign to, because I'm a guest. But even sort of looking at the tiny bit of YouTube things that popped up and mainstream stuff that I happened to catch, most of which was, and I can't even say the 3-letter word without smiling, Fox, USA News. It's just a parody. It's just ridiculous. It is. And the BBC World Service thing, or whatever they call it, on international television is just a complete joke. But one thing I noticed of the little bit that I saw with this Greta, whatever her face is,
it's like a cheese grater.
Yeah.
It's like an iceberg that has tons of ice. Greta Thunberg.
Okay, I believe you. Right, that's her, yeah. Couple of things I noticed. If she always just says, well, you know, the science is now accepted. Really? By who? Not me. I didn't do that. And it's like when they say, well, everybody knows that. Whoa, hang on a minute. Am I included in this everybody thing because I didn't fucking sign up? You know,
not everybody knows. Look at Jerry over here. He doesn't know shit.
Yeah. And whenever, it's always, well, the science is accepted. But the other thing, whenever anybody asks her a question, she takes off her hat, and then one of her handlers comes in and says, that's all we've got time for. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
And that's the signal. You watch it. That's the signal to the handler. She takes her hat off. The handler comes in and then says, oh, thank you. No more time for questions.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's what's kind of difficult about it as well, because it's so clearly manufactured, right? But
Yeah.
to the untrained eye, it appears spontaneous.
Mm.
So the goal of Greta is to, number one, demonize anybody who questions the science on climate change. This includes anybody who does this thing called science. All right.
Yeah,
Now,
exactly right. Yeah.
all right. So can you do science? Yes, I can do science. All the science. I've read all the science. Really? How many qualifications you got? None. How many years have you spent studying this stuff in terms of the actual documents and the IPCC reports? How many of them you read? None. Okay. So you don't know anything. You're just being told to say certain things, and you're going off and you're saying it because you believe it, because you're a child. You haven't been around long enough to realize that adults are liars. Adults are immoral. Okay. And when you're a child and you have all this innocence and stuff like that, you don't have that cynicism that just says, oh my God, my parents, a lot of their friends, and all of these other people are actually liars and immoral people. They're bad people, and I can't trust them. So when you have that realization, that's called adulthood. Okay. You can't trust everybody, and there are a lot of bad people around. Once you realize that, you're now starting to get into adulthood. Now, a lot of people, on the other hand, who are, the age of adults, have not entered adulthood yet, and may never, by all accounts,
Yep.
because their ability to deny what they think, their ability to believe what they hear, is absolutely strong. Okay, I can deny anything and I can believe anything. Imagine that. Perfect mind control subject. What are you going to vote for in the next vote? Oh, I'm going to vote Remain.
The other thing with the Greta Thunberg or Greta, or listen, this just, yeah. My other thought on it was, what they're actually doing to her is child abuse.
Yeah.
And more than that, the following that she's got is mass child abuse. Because what they've done, they've taken the generation of adults that are older than like Greta's parents and all of the people that are coming out and doing all this demonstrating or whatever because of what she's doing and saying. All those parents, they've just been taken out of the equation. Because any parent who sat down and said to any of those childs who said, look, we know what you've seen on the TV, but have you thought that? Well, straight away, that child's going to say, no, you're wrong. Dad, Mum, you're wrong. You're wrong. Because this young girl's saying it. And she's one of us. She's not one of you. She's one of us. So she must be right. And they've just found this great way of totally taking away the adults of the generation above the 16, 17-year-olds or 15-year-olds by using this girl, abusing her. It's mental abuse, what they're doing to her. And then in turn, she's then spreading that and passing it on to the population that are then following her. It's just abuse.
Yeah. Well, when I was 16, I was concerned about getting my hands on two things primarily: girls and beer.
Yeah.
All right. Now, that is a healthy obsession for a 16-year-old to have. Why is Greta not out there trying to find herself some schlong and alcohol? Okay, she's just not well. This is not ordinary behavior, folks. Why isn't she on her smartphone all the time watching people doing makeup videos on YouTube and things like that? Give this girl a life.
But it's just like the abuse of the child, yeah, and the accepted, oh, it's just science, so it's all accepted now. Bollocks. But if you take that away, the main concern for me is they've just almost taken away the generation above that, the mums and dads of Greta's generation, and said, no. Whatever they say no longer counts for anything. And they've almost found a way to get straight into the kid at an even younger age. By using this climate human affected climate change. Well, of course the climate's changing. It's called fucking weather. You know, and surely we had the Ice Age, and then we had all the other stuff, you know, because that's what it. But for anybody who says, "Oh, we're going to save the planet," you arrogant bastard, really? What, this big thing, and you're just this, and you're really? How are you going to do that?
Yeah,
No, you're not.
I can imagine a bacteria trying to save me. You know,
Yeah.
Vinny's gonna die. Let's let's tax the blood cells.
Yeah. It's just ridiculous.
People don't even know what a macroorganism is and stuff like that. I mean, it's like, you know, what's your belief in God or whatever? You know, is the earth flat or whatever? And so, no, it's not flat. It's actually a holographic projection of collective consciousness experiencing itself subjectively in a fractal pattern. Okay. Now, what that means is you have thoughts. Your thoughts affect the matter around you in a tiny, tiny little way. And when you expand out into the universe, you've got the Earth, you've got the galaxy, you've got star clusters, and all of this kind of thing. They're simply larger forms of organism. All right. And the thing that binds them all is a twin magnetic field. All right, we've got a magnetic field that comes out of our brain, magnetic field that comes out of our heart. The Earth's got the dual Van Allen radiation belts, magnetic fields that are coming off of it. I think that these are actually the signatures of sentient organisms, and all of these organisms are either on the micro scale or the macro scale. Okay, or the 5 trillion cells or what have you that make up my body. To me, I mean, to them, I'm God. You know, I'm their everything. I'm where they live. I'm where they die. And to the Earth, to me, that's technically on a scale up there. That's kind of like me being a bacteria on a singular cell. You know, that kind of thing. Then you look at the Earth and you think about its size and shape and its position in the galaxy, and you look at the position of the galaxy and what it looks like. 2 giant magnetic fields coming out. We are all the children of creation experiencing our own scale of existence. And that scale of existence affects the entire tree of existence. So what happens down here will happen up there. What's happening up there will come down here. And so a lot of people don't really understand this concept that everything you do has an effect, including doing nothing. And a large amount of people, unfortunately, they believe that doing nothing will come from nothing. And that's not how it works. If you do nothing, something's going to happen, and you're probably not going to like it. That's why you're going to have to be active. You're going to have to go and talk on the radio, Vinny. You're going to have to pay off your debts. You're going to have to find out ways of getting revenue and stuff like that just so that you can survive. Reality doesn't care what you think, ladies and gentlemen. It doesn't feel for you. All right? It really doesn't. We, human beings, we care about each other. We can help each other. And I think that a large amount of the time that we're going on about which topic gets us most angry, we're focusing on things that perhaps we shouldn't be. Like, I think I did like maybe 3-4 shows on Greta Thunberg. And I was having a lot of fun. I was reading out her speeches in a Nazi voice. It was really fun. But kind of got bored of it. You know, it was just like, I'm just trying to attack something I don't like. I'm not creating anything I love. Let's not do that. You know, I haven't done a show on it since, really. I mean, until you asked me about it, of course, bastards.
Well, you know,
Listen, I'm sorry about my disappearance earlier on. Unfortunately, I had to go throw up, so I'm feeling a lot better now. So if you missed me, I don't think anybody missed me, but if you did, that's where I were. I wanted to ask you, while we're on this subject, Extinction Rebellion. Now, at the moment, they're all over British cities doing this ridiculous stuff. I mean, these. I don't know I don't even know how to describe them, but they're sort of having these dances. They've obviously done a course at the Notting Hill Carnival of expressing your love for the planet through the medium of dance. And, you know, they've decided that they're going to do this, and they're spraying up there. And it's just I having a similar sort of thing going. And by the way, this is getting blanket media coverage from the news, whereas any yellow vest stuff. That's any yellow vest stuff that's been going on in our country, and I noticed that, I think it was last week, but there were 42 weeks of protests every week in Paris, and it's not being covered at all. Yet you get some middle-aged people that knit their own yogurts and do all, and they do never. Do you know what I mean? And they don't do this. They're expressing themselves. They feel as though they're doing something, but they're really not. They're just serving an agenda to people to look stupid to normal people.
Yeah, I think that's what's happening with the media. Essentially, as Bill Hicks said, he said that the job of the media is to prevent you from hearing your own voice of reason reflected back to you. All right, because there's something on in your mind that just goes, this is BS. But if the person on the news never says, look, I think this is BS, then you'll kind of sit there and you'll get frustrated. Now, this is what's called gaslighting. All right, so the people who are running the media, they know that that they're lying. So what they do is they just keep lying to you to make you go crazy. Okay? And you'll sit there and you'll see this exact opposite version of reality in front of you, to which everything you disagree with. And then they tell you that you're the one who's crazy because you disagree with it. That's gaslighting, folks. That's how they get you. That's why you've got to turn off the mainstream media, because all it's designed to do, it's designed specifically to make you go crazy. You ever see somebody who watches too much news? How would you describe them? A little bit crazy?
Wiry.
You know why?
Yeah. And Vinny, it's not just the news. It's the soap operas and the storylines. It's the movies, especially with the movies.
In media, yeah.
And the documentaries and the shit that we get on the TV here, which is like, don't pay or we'll take it away, which is these sheriffs and the bailiffs and, oh, this is how you must act when they come to your door. I've got a better idea. Just open the door and go, tell you what, mate, how does fuck off sound? And just shut the door. Because they've got nothing other than some dodgy piece of paper they printed off in their office that means nothing. Nothing. It's called stationery because it don't move and it's not capable of doing anything. Period. And how it works here, I don't know what it's like in New Zealand. If you get a county court judgment against you and you are a householder, then really they can do nothing other than try to encourage you to pay off this judgment against you. But if I buy something from your shop, which completely turns out to be crap, and I manage to take you to court and I win, then these county court bailiffs can walk into a business and take stock from the shelf. They can take company cars if they're owned. Not that they would be these days, because everything's rented. But they can literally take stock from the shelf to cover the so-called debt. But if it's a private house, that's not the same. So they put all this shit on the telly of these bailiffs arriving on people's door with the help of the police, okay, who come and invade their home and take things away, or they're not going to have to pay. Or they do things like they did to Jason. They actually televise when they terrorize people, knock their front door in so that they can fit an electricity meter where you must prepay for your electricity. And that's the sort of shit that they've got the cheek to call television here in the UK.
That's just kind of like a bullying and intimidation writ large in scale.
But it's a training session for all those watching to say, this is what happens to you if you don't pay.
Yeah, that's what I'm talking about, yeah.
And if you don't pay, this is how you must react when we get there. It's just like a training. It's just this. And it's not even subliminal. It's just completely blatant. And this is what is going to happen to you. Whereas somebody like me would just open the door and go, yeah, all right, whatever.
Vinny, you were making the point earlier on that that things are coming from all directions to everybody, and everybody's got this, and everyone sort of feels, and perhaps in a way that they don't know how they feel. They don't know what that is. That feeling that they get, like they might dread. Sometimes some people might dread going onto Facebook just in case somebody sent them a message or done something. There's those feelings, but they don't quite understand them. But now we've got the mental health stuff that's going on, so that now what they're doing is saying, it's okay, you're okay, it's not a problem with you, you're just in this bracket, this is the mental health disorder that you've got. Now, we had earlier on this week, I don't know what it was about, but there was an advert that was going to be going out simultaneously on different channels. And it was a mental health advert. It was an advert about mental health, and it was the first advert where a royal had been in the advert. I think it was, which one? Harry Hewitt's bird.
Don't know.
Megan, whatever her name is. She was
Megan,
in it.
Yeah.
It was a big thing. So it was simulcast on varying different places. Now, for me, all they're doing is hoovering up people to say, look, if these feelings, and you don't understand what these feelings are, we've got here the answer for you. We can stick you into this compartment. We can give you treatment with this thing, which is probably going to dull that part of your brain that is, causing you the problems. But it's not really going to do anything, because it's like they've set the trap for people anyway, with the how society's been built.
And people are happy to accept that, because it means I can be a victim. At last I found something I can be a victim about.
I think it's basically childishness. All right.
Yep.
I had a look at a video the other day. I was like, am I immature? Probably. Okay,
Yep.
let's go on and have a look at a video. Test your maturity. And it had all these little questions, and each question had a value assigned to it. What's your favorite food? What kind of movie would you like to watch? And so on and so forth. And the result for me was, Vinny, you've got the emotional maturity of a teenager. And I was like, okay, what does that mean? What does that mean, having the emotional maturity of a teenager? It means that you are constantly trying to find your place in the world. That's what teenagers do. They've grown up, they're out of childhood and what have you, and what's their number one job right now is to find their way in the world. So they try this, they try that, they do this, they do that, that kind of thing, and they're sort of all over the place until eventually they become mature and they settle down and they start doing exactly what they're doing. So it's a very similar thing with me right now. I mean, I'm the Joint Chief of Web and Social Media for the Legalized Cannabis Party. I'm the host of the Vinny Eastwood Show. I'm admin of like 70 different Facebook pages. I'm the executive producer of American Freedom Radio, and I'm the lead singer of Vinny and the Vendettas. All right, so you can tell that I have a lack of proper emotional maturity, because once you get older, you realize that, okay, we don't want that, don't have the time for it, and stuff like that. And I haven't managed to go through those things yet, but it was very enlightening to realize that I wasn't actually emotionally mature, and then to look at what is the main difference between somebody who is mature and somebody who is not. Criticism. If you receive criticism and you're an immature person, oh, it wasn't my fault, it was something else, oh, there's just stuff going on right now. You'll make infinite freaking excuses for every single one of your failures. A mature person goes, okay, yep, I failed. Let's fix it. Let's try it again. Let's try and correct it. That's what a mature person does versus an immature person. And when you hear those two descriptions, you're like, whoa, that's like almost everybody I know. Because that's what we're doing now. My wife is like that. I'm like that. We don't take personal responsibility for the things that we're doing wrong and then try to correct them. We just try to make excuses for why we don't have to change, why we don't have to do anything. And I believe that this is kind of like partly narcissism and partly just immaturity and stuff like that. And maybe narcissism is a form of immaturity, who knows? But essentially, I'm self-obsessed, so I'm like always thinking about myself and always thinking about my thoughts and my achievements and all of this kind of stuff. And now I think it's been like 13 years I've been trying to have a baby with my wife, and she's finally conceived. Thank you.
Excellent. Congratulations.
Oh, there's a great relief, because now my job is done.
No, you mean because it works.
Yeah. Well,
somebody's works.
Yeah. Well, you got her pregnant. It's working. So and now it's her job to deal with it. And I just have to rub her feet maybe 3-4 times a day or something like that. But she's whinging a lot. I remember last night, baby, can you make me a cup of peppermint tea? And I was like, baby, you don't have to whinge. You can just ask me for a cup of peppermint tea. It's no big deal. Can you please make me a cup of peppermint tea? Baby, it's so cute.
I think we're walking on rather dodgy ground.
She never listens to the show. We can say anything.
Vinny, we've got a few minutes left, but there's one thing I do want to ask you about. Earlier on, Jason made a really good point in that New Zealand especially, but also Australia, is almost used as a testing ground for how much shit really will the population take. Now,
yeah, I mean, we tested social welfare here in New Zealand. We tested giving the women the vote here in New Zealand. Now, on giving the women the vote, what they figured out was that the women voted the same as their husbands, so there was no real danger to the political establishment. The exact same thing would happen as per whether you gave women the vote or not. So then England passed it, and she was, "Aren't we great? We gave you all the suffragettes the vote," and then nothing changed. So there you go. And then they tried social welfare here, and that worked because a whole bunch of people who were now beholden and dependent upon the state seem to continue supporting the state with their votes. So they're like, okay, we've tested that in New Zealand. That's what happens. Let's test it over here, social welfare and everything like that. And now we've got whole bunches of dependent populations who will support basically anything the government does, because if they don't, they'll lose their benefits. Yes. All right, brilliant. So what else have we got going on here over in New Zealand that we experimented on?
Vaccinations.
Did they experiment here with vaccinations before bringing them to the rest of the world? Because as far as I know, that's been pretty well documented across the entire world that vaccinations do not work. In fact, they do the exact opposite of what they say they do. Oh, it's going to make you healthy. It's going to keep you safe from disease by making you sick and giving you a disease. Okay, that doesn't sound logical at all. Yeah, but we'll just repeat it to you 1,000 times a day in every single way from birth till death, and then you'll believe it. You're probably right. I will believe something that if I'm repeated to it 1,000 times a day from 1,000 different sources. Yeah, I will believe that, won't I? Great. But in terms of New Zealand, I mean, this Christchurch mosque massacre has basically been the biggest test I've ever seen in my lifetime. That is. So we're testing the population. Now, can we bring in a foreigner, give them guns, and have them kill a whole bunch of foreigners who'd only just recently immigrated here, and get the local population to hate each other and anybody who has guns and anybody who has white skins? Can we do that? Yes, we can. And we can get rid of their internet freedom. And we can get rid of their free speech. And we can get rid of their national sovereignty. One dude with a gun. Brilliant. And, well, let's not forget the 24-hour-a-day constant news coverage of this instance, constantly putting that fear into everybody. Again, repeated 1,000 times a day from 1,000 different sources. It's brainwashing. It's mind control. People didn't even think this thing was really all that important. In the United States, they have shootings that are bigger than this every other week. And it's just like, oh, but it happened in New Zealand. Oh, this needs to be a great test case then. Can we get rid of everybody's internet freedom? Can we get rid of their freedom of speech? Can we get rid of their national sovereignty? Can we get rid of their guns in one fell swoop? Yes, we can. So, ladies and gentlemen, congratulations, because New Zealand didn't resist adequately enough the propaganda of this Christchurch mosque massacre. I can guarantee you, sooner or later, there will be incidents in everybody's countries which they will use to take away your guns. They will use to take away your internet freedom. They will use to take away your free speech, just like my country has done to me. and all of my fellow New Zealanders. So don't fall for it when it happens, folks. Be cynical.
We already are, aren't we, Adi? We're as cynical as they come. Me and Adi there.
Yeah, definitely.
Well, one can only hope.
Well, you've got to be, like you say. It is. It seems that we're being attacked from all ports. And I did have an interesting conversation with somebody who told me this week that to curb the resistance to smart meters, what's going to happen is the internet is going to be classified as a utility, which means it will have to go through the smart meter. So people won't have routers like they have now. It will all have to go through the smart meter. So if you don't have a smart meter, you won't be able to have the internet. That's the idea behind that. And I heard that this week from somebody who knows quite a bit of stuff. So I don't know if you'd heard anything like that, Vinny, but it certainly does make sense, doesn't it?
I think we're heading into dark times and what have you, but my approach to it is always, have a laugh, try to understand it a little bit more, and realize that there are still things that are worth fighting for. Because basically, depression's more or less the number one destroyer of armies. Okay, the troops get tired, they want to go home. I am home, and I'm still tired, because I have to keep fighting this all the time. It's a war of attrition. And I wonder, it's like, I've been doing this for 10 years, got 44,400 YouTube subscribers, and still find it very difficult to get over 100 people watching a live stream. Still finding it difficult to pay the bills. Still finding it difficult to do even basic things that ordinary people who work for a living can do. And I'm just kind of like, that's very sad, but that's just the reality of the situation. If you want to get real rich and real famous and real loved and things like that, telling the truth ain't gonna get you there, ladies and gentlemen. Who are the richest and most powerful and most influential people in the world? They're lying psychopaths who tell people what they want to hear. I'm not one of those. So I'd rather be struggling to survive on an occasional basis than not have a soul. All right? And I think that's basically the choice that we all have to make. It's like every time we want to live, we have to sacrifice a chunk of our soul. And I'm just like, I'm not doing that anymore. And I haven't been doing so for some time, and it wasn't even my choice. My body just has panic attacks when I go to job interviews or on the first day of the job or something like that. Physically can't do it. And so that's why I ask people to start up automatic payments into the Kiwi Bank and the PayPal and sign up for Patreon and stuff like that, because with those regular automatic monthly and weekly payments and things like that, I'm able to survive and just keep doing what I'm doing and paying the bills and things like that. I may not be getting that bigger, but I do know that there are a lot of people who are alive today who wouldn't be had they not listened to the show, because often in this movement, people get very, very serious. They get very, very upset, and they get very, very aggressive, and then they get very, very depressed, and they kill themselves. A lot of people who become into the conspiracy light, as it were, wind up destroying themselves and or giving up and going back into the workforce or killing themselves. And my job here as a talk radio show host is to prevent that from happening. Okay, I understand that it's very, very hard to live when you're surrounded by people who don't know what you're on about, by people who don't get you. Okay, I know what that feels like. It's kind of the reason I started the show, because all the people who know what I'm on about and get me aren't in my family. They aren't in my circle of friends. They're online. This is my tribe. This is where we all are. And this is the battlefield that we've chosen to stand together on.
And that resonates with us because we just feel the same. We do. I do understand what when you're saying that it is difficult to get like an ordinary job, and especially when you've got such a high profile. I think you're probably the best known alternative media personality, shall we say, in New Zealand. So it's going to be difficult for you to hide from that and to try and live a normal life. And as you say, it's difficult to live a normal life anyway, because of just because of what's going on around you, and how when you react to that, it affects other people around you, who don't know how to react and how to respond to that. Before we've done about 2 hours, so before I want to wrap up. I wanted to ask you if there's anything that you've seen that gives you some hope. Anything you've seen recently? We all seem to have become disconnected from each other. People that have similar interests because of what we use for social media and stuff. And the way that we know that it's all controlled and shadow banning goes on and all this stuff, we seem to have been disconnected. So is there anybody that you've come across recently, or anything that you've come across recently that sort of that you said to yourself, yeah, that's something not perhaps for us to get behind, but that's something to just keep an eye on and hope that that something comes of it?
No. Okay, now
I knew he was going to do that. Vinny, I'm sorry, man. I just knew it. Brilliant. What you should have said was, sorry, what was the question? Sorry, what was the question, Jason?
It's like, is there anything that's giving you hope? But I'll counter that as well by just kind of recounting an example. I think it was earlier this week, or was it last week? I think we were short of cash, and we didn't have enough money for rent, and we had no idea where any money was going to come from. And then my wife leaves the house to go to work. She texts me a minute later, and she says, "Vinny, there was a card in the letterbox, and it had 250 euros in it." It's like, wow, unsolicited, didn't know, and was in a desperate situation, and then immediately got delivered from it, right? That, ladies and gentlemen, happens almost all the time in my life. You just think about something that you need, and it's right there. Does that give me hope? Not necessarily. What it does is it gives me reassurance, encouragement. Encouragement means you give courage to others. They suddenly are given courage. That's encouragement. And I think that if you are doing the right thing by the universe in general, in the aggregate, if you're being who you're supposed to be, if you're doing what you're supposed to do, exactly what you need, exactly when you need it, precisely in the quantity that you require, will turn up exactly at the right time. Not before, not after, but at the right time. And you simply need to sit there and have faith that what you're doing is the right thing, and hope that the universe hears you. Now that gives me a bit of hope, I guess.
Yeah, area.
Awesome. Well, it's always good to end on a note of hope. I think we've come to the end of this show for this Raconteurs. It's not been on for a while. As you know, I've been in hospital. I'll tell you about that, the ramifications and what's going on at the moment. On another show, we'll probably do an after dark later on in the week, myself and Aid. But listen, big thanks to you, Vinny. You just tell everybody where they can find you, Oh, and let me just say, if any of your listeners want to, because you're broadcasting as well on your channel, so if any of your listeners, you can find us at Raconteurs News. We do we've got a huge back catalogue of shows from the past 3 or 4 years. So where can people find you, Vinny?
Okay, well, they can find me at thevinnieeastwoodshow.com. What I'm really trying to encourage people to do this month is to go to patreon.com/Vinny Eastwood. That's Vinny with a Y because it's the most important question. Eastwood, like, go ahead, make my news. And sign up, ladies and gentlemen, to become a Patreon if it's only just $1 a month in some way, shape, or form. And I especially want to thank all the people in the chat room who've been chatting the whole time that we've been going here. Susie and Aaron and Kathy and Only Love and J.S. Hansen and Gang Stalking Australia and Evan and Josh. Thank you all very much for being in the chat room. And I do want to encourage people to check out my YouTube channel, youtube.com/C/Vinny Eastwood NZ. That's the main YouTube channel. That's got 44,000 subscribers. Now, this is also simulcasting on the backup channel. So if you are on the backup channel, you're able to do super chats, which is really handy. Unless, of course, they've frickin' demonetized it, because I'm looking at the, yeah, it looks like the backup channel's been demonetized now. Is it? Oh my God. I didn't notice that. How unfortunate.
Vinny, just one thing to point out. You've now got, I always was a subscriber, and in pure algorithm style, I've just found out that I somehow become unsubscribed from Vinny Eastwood. So
that's been happening a lot
again.
lately. That's another thing that's been happening a lot lately. I've been stuck on 44,400 subscribers for 3 months in a row.
Yeah.
That's not possible. It's actually not physically possible for that to happen.
Yeah.
Considering the amount of shows that I've been doing and stuff like that. But yeah, it appears that now my super channel, my backup channel is gone now as well. So, oh well. So they're basically just going to shut us down step by step by step. And we're in trouble, folks. You know, if there is anybody in the chat room there who can see the super chat $sign or something like that, just make a super chat now to make me stop having a heart attack, because I'm like really freaking out about that right now, actually. Don't you just hate it when you discover really terrible things that are going to affect your life in the middle of a live broadcast? It's like, come on, man.
Vinny, I think on that one, what we'll say is hopefully some of your however many real viewers you've got will drop onto Raconteurs News, and equally in the opposite direction. But I, for one, have just resubscribed to you, so hopefully that should go well. Just 2 words that I want to say to everybody, and it's simply this: who benefits? Next time you hear something, see something, read something, ask yourself that: who benefits?
Excellent.
And that's it. It really, that's how easy it is to get in here.
But we need all the peripheral stuff, otherwise we don't have a show. If we're just pointing out who benefits all the time, we need to break it all down. So yes, we agree with you on that, Ada. So big thanks to Ada and to Vinny Eastwood as well. Thanks for getting up early, and I know you've took yourself together and you've had your toast and marmite and everything, and now you need to go and see what the problem is with the monetization of your channel. So
please let us know, Vinny. Please, you know, drop us a private mail and let us know what happens with that, because we wish you the best, seriously.
Cheers, brother.
Yeah, we certainly do. Well, listen, I'd like to say thanks to everyone for listening, everyone who's in the chat room, Uni Black Sister, It's Me Coffee, Super Leeds, Cheris Rosin, Catching Fire, all the people who have been in the chat room. There's been loads as well. And I was just watching, I was just thinking about this. This was actually on TV earlier on, but there was an old episode of Bullseye, and I was just thinking to myself, the difference between then and now. And this was the joke. This is with the gag that Jim Bowen said. So he said he was talking about a club that somebody, Mexborough Club, that's what we were talking about, Mexborough Club, that's how I know.
Which is about 15, 20 kilometres from where we're sat right now, Vinny.
Yeah, not very far. But he was talking about Mexborough Club, and he says, "Oh yes, I remember. I did Mexborough Club one time. I was on the same bill as 4 coloured fellas. Oh, what were they called? That's right, the Ink Spots." And I thought, they never get away with that these days.
No.
So, Jim Bowen, I was going to write a letter to Jim Bowen and to Bullseye to complain about that. He died last year, didn't he? So if I back
Yeah, he
did.
Yeah, Vinny, Bullseye was a very sort of 1970s darts-based quiz show here in the UK. And after 30-odd years, they now think it's a good idea to keep re-showing them. But the guy who was the presenter, in true UK TV style, was a comic. And so, of course, he was telling jokes of the day, and there are some absolute howlers that come through.
The other one that he said as well, he did two in one show, because the other one that he said, one of the questions was about a piece of music that was written by a German composer, and the person got it right. It was Handel, and he said, there you go, German composer. So that would have been chamber music. Which again, you thought it was a little bit, in this day and age, it's a wonder Jim Bowen's grave's not been desecrated as we speak. But anyway, thanks to Aid, thanks to Vinny as well. Thanks to everyone for listening. We'll see you. Just keep a lookout for us. You know how things are with me. I'm in pain a lot of the time. I had to go and vom during the show tonight, but it's we've got through to the end. I'm going to say finally. We've really enjoyed it, but we've got through to the end, and that's the most important thing. So look out for us. We might do an after dark later on in the week, and look for us next week as well. I'm going to try and book some more guests. So thanks, Aid and Vinny, and thanks to everyone for listening. We'll see you next week. Ta-ra a bit. Bye.
Cheers, guys. See ya.